Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Ethan Carter never thought he'd be there, inside a rented van, watching the street like some cheap movie detective. He was a practical, methodical man, always with his feet on the ground. He'd spent his life building an impeccable career, a respected reputation, and a marriage he'd believed until recently was unshakable. But now, with his eyes fixed on the entrance of the gym where his wife, Olivia, was supposedly at, everything he thought he knew about his own life seemed to be falling apart right in front of him. The van was hot and stuffy, even with the air conditioning on. The dashboard reflected the yellowish glow from the streetlights, casting shadows on his trembling hands. Ethan had never had trust issues. Olivia had always been predictable, rigid schedule, fixed hours, commitments always kept. But then small cracks started appearing in the perfect framework of their marriage. Details that made no sense, strange behavior, changes that seemed insignificant at first but now felt like a brick weighing on his chest. The first thing that caught his attention was her being out at odd times. Olivia always had a very clear routine. She'd visit their daughter Lauren almost every day after work to help with their newborn grandson. Then she'd go to the gym before coming home at the same time as always. But then things started to change. Small delays, vague excuses, her phone always face down on the table. It wasn't like Ethan was paranoid. He'd never been the jealous type. But something inside him told him that something wasn't right. The first shock came at their grandson's first birthday party. Ethan was in the yard, chatting with some of Lauren's friends, when he noticed something strange at the neighbor's house. A man was standing near the window, holding binoculars, watching the party closely. The feeling was immediate, like a silent alarm going off in his brain. At first, he thought it was just a curious neighbor, someone who wanted to see what was going on. But then something caught his attention. The man wasn't interested in the party, the guests, or even the kids running around the yard. He was looking at Olivia. In that moment, Ethan couldn't explain exactly what he felt. Anger? Jealousy? Insecurity? He forced himself to ignore it, to tell himself it was nothing, that he was seeing things that weren't there. But the uneasiness stuck. And it got worse. That night, while Olivia was showering, he quickly looked through her phone. Something he'd never done in 24 years of marriage. But everything was clean. No suspicious messages. No record of recent calls. It seemed too clean. Now, sitting in that van, waiting to see with his own eyes what was really happening, Ethan felt something he couldn't explain. Part of him just wanted Olivia to go into the gym as she always did, work out for an hour, and come home like any other night. But there was another part, one he hated admitting, that needed to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The gym was near Lauren's house, a detail that had never mattered to Ethan, until now. He started the van's engine, ready to follow her. Then he saw it. The gym door opened, and Olivia walked out. But instead of getting into her car and driving home, she did something unexpected. She looked around, as if making sure no one was watching, and started walking. Ethan leaned forward, his heart pounding. What the hell was she doing? She crossed the street and turned the corner. Ethan started the van, keeping a safe distance, feeling the rush of adrenaline flood his body. With every step Olivia took, the weight on Ethan's chest got heavier. Then she stopped in front of a house. A house he knew very well. His stomach twisted. The lights were on, and a second later, the door of the house opened. The man who appeared in the doorway made Ethan's blood run cold. Ryan Walker. Ethan couldn't breathe. This was the man who had once destroyed Olivia. The man she never talked about. The man he never thought would come back into their lives. And here she was. At his door. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, trying to find some logical thought. But there wasn't one. The only thing he was sure of now was that everything he believed about his wife was about to change forever. Ethan's blood felt like it had frozen in his veins. His heart was pounding so hard he could practically hear it. Olivia was standing there, right in front of Ryan's house, the man who should have been nothing but a ghost from her past. The man Ethan always believed was just a faded scar in her story. But he wasn't. He was there. And so was she. Ethan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He wanted to slam on the gas, park right in front of the house, and demand answers on the spot. But he couldn't move. Fear had him paralyzed. It wasn't fear of being cheated on, not yet. It was fear of the truth. A truth he might not be ready to face. The world seemed to spin in slow motion, dragging on as if it wanted to torture him. Ethan kept his eyes locked on her. Olivia hesitated for a moment, looking behind her as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, with a final sigh, she went inside the house. Without looking back. Ethan let out the breath he'd been holding, feeling like someone had punched him in the stomach. His mind refused to accept what he'd just seen. But there was no other explanation. She was lying. She hadn't been where she said she was. But how? How could Olivia, a woman who'd always been against any kind of cheating, who carried deep trauma from having been betrayed before, do this to him? Anger came first, burning in his chest like fire. But right after that, another feeling took over. A cruel doubt that made him question everything. He kept his eyes on the house, but his mind was somewhere else. He was dragged back to a simpler time, to a past that now felt far away. He remembered the first time he saw Olivia. It was a cold night on campus. He noticed her before she even knew he existed. There was something about her that made him want to take another look. It wasn't just beauty, it was a presence. An intensity in her eyes, like she carried a whole world inside her. When he finally approached her, he realized something was wrong. She was smiling, talking with her friends, but her eyes were red. She'd been crying. And when he found out why, he felt a surge of anger he hadn't known he was capable of. Ryan Walker. The man who had been Olivia's great youthful love. The man she thought would be her future. But who'd destroyed her without a second thought. He cheated on her. More than once. And Olivia found out in the worst possible way. She was humiliated. He didn't even bother to deny it. He simply blamed her. Said she was too intense, too demanding. That he needed freedom. Then he carried on with his life, leaving behind a broken woman. Ethan held her when she cried. He saw her slowly rebuild herself, watched her resilience, her struggle to believe in love again. When they finally got together, Ethan made a silent promise, he would never make her go through that again. But now? Now he was the one on the other side. The irony of it made him let out a bitter laugh inside the van. He, who had spent over 2 decades believing he'd saved Olivia from a destructive love, was now the victim of a story that had come full circle. But a doubt began to grow inside him. Something he didn't want to consider but couldn't ignore. What if this reunion wasn't recent? Ethan's stomach lurched. He'd always believed Ryan was in the past. Olivia never mentioned him. Never talked about him. Never said his name in any conversation, even when old stories from her youth came up. It was like he just didn't exist. But now Ethan understood. She didn't talk about Ryan because she'd never forgotten him. The thought hit him hard. Maybe Olivia wasn't just reconnecting with an ex-boyfriend. Maybe she'd never stopped loving him. What if Ryan was always the great love of her life? And Ethan was always just in second place? The idea suffocated him. He tried to push it away, told himself it was paranoia. But deep down, he knew he'd always suspected. For years, Olivia would have moments where she withdrew. Small periods of silence, distant looks, like she was somewhere else. Ethan always chalked it up to tiredness or stress. But what if, in reality, it was longing? He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, feeling his nails digging into his palms. He needed answers. And he needed them now. The door to the house was still closed. Time was passing, but Olivia wasn't coming out. Then another thought occurred to him. If she lied about the gym, how many other lies had she told? Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Took a deep breath. When he opened them, he was no longer the same man who had gotten into that van. Great observation. Those inconsistencies need to be fixed so the narrative stays coherent. I'll rewrite section 3 to ensure it aligns perfectly with the previous events and maintains maximum tension and emotion. The silence inside the van felt deafening. Ethan stayed perfectly still, staring at Ryan's house with his eyes fixed on the door. Night had fallen completely, and the street was empty except for a few streetlights that cast warped shadows on the ground. He had no idea how long he'd been there. Time seemed stretched, turning minutes into hours. He wanted to wait for Olivia to come out, but part of him was afraid of what he might see. If she walked out of there and got in her car as if nothing had happened, smiling, without remorse, he'd know the betrayal wasn't just a recent slip. It would be a pattern. Something planned. But she didn't come out right away. Ethan stayed there for an hour. Then, just when he was about to leave, thinking maybe she'd spent the night in that house, the door finally opened. Olivia appeared. She wasn't nervous. She didn't look around, didn't show any sign of guilt. She just fixed her hair, checked her phone, and headed to her car. Like she'd just come from any ordinary meeting. Ethan didn't move. He waited. He watched. She started the car and drove home. Then he realized what came next, he'd have to go home too. How could he face her? How could he share the same bed, knowing she'd just been there? But he couldn't explode yet. He needed to know more. He drove back home, his fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter with every mile. When he arrived, Olivia was already there, in the shower. He entered the house quietly, unsure how to act. He was still running on adrenaline, but he kept it together. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, waiting for her to come out of the shower. A few minutes later, she stepped out wrapped in a towel, drying her hair. "You were home late today," he said, testing the waters. Olivia didn't hesitate. "I hit awful traffic after the gym." She said it way too casually. No wait. No hesitation. The lie slipped out of her mouth like it was perfectly normal. Ethan just nodded, forcing a faint smile. Then he lay down beside her, pretending everything was fine. But inside him, something had shattered. That night, he didn't sleep. He lay there, listening to Olivia's steady breathing next to him. His eyes on the ceiling, his mind stuck on that house. On that man. Ryan Walker. What if this wasn't the first time? What if it had been going on for months? Or years? His first thought was to confront her right then. But he knew he needed proof. He needed to understand the extent of the lie before turning everything upside down. So, for the first time in 24 years of marriage, Ethan decided to keep an eye on his own wife. The next morning, he watched Olivia leave for work like nothing had happened. The same quick kiss on the cheek, the same smile that once felt real but now felt like part of an act. As soon as she left, Ethan got to work. He opened her laptop, searching for any clue. Emails, archived chats, anything that might connect her to Ryan. Nothing. Olivia was careful. But not careful enough. Ethan knew his next step was to follow her. He drove to her office, parked far away, and waited. When lunchtime rolled around, he saw Olivia leave the building. She said she was going to lunch with a coworker. But instead of heading to the restaurant where she usually met her friend, she drove somewhere else. The same neighborhood where Lauren lived. The same street. And then, the same house. Ryan. Ethan's blood boiled. But he stayed in his car. He didn't rush to the door. He didn't pound on the window and demand answers. This time, he waited. He needed to know. He needed to see for himself. If Olivia really was lying to him, betraying him the way he feared, then he wanted her to know he'd found out. And this time, she wouldn't be able to hide from the truth. The silence in the car was cutting. Ethan stared at the house in front of him, trying to control his breathing. His mind screamed at him to get out and do something. Anything. But he waited. Minutes crawled by as though time was mocking him. With every passing second, the possibility that Olivia was inside that house with Ryan, shamelessly lying to him, ate away at his chest. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to organize his thoughts. All he could see was Olivia walking through that door as if it were the most normal thing in the world. As if there was nothing wrong. But there was. Ethan knew that if he acted impulsively, he could destroy any chance of understanding the truth. He had to catch her at the right moment. Then, the door opened. Olivia walked out. This time, he didn't look away. Every detail mattered. She didn't look nervous. She wasn't checking her phone obsessively, didn't look rushed. She just walked to her car, fixed her hair, and got in. Ethan swallowed hard. If Olivia was cheating on him, could she really feel no guilt? That wasn't how he imagined a liar would act. He expected her to seem hesitant, worried, but not so, calm. That doubt tore at him even more. She started the car and drove away. This time, he didn't follow. Ethan stayed there, staring at Ryan's house like it was a gateway to some truth he still didn't know. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his heart pounding. He needed answers. If Olivia wasn't going to give them, then Ryan would. Ethan got out of the car and walked to the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. He could feel the adrenaline burning inside him. He stopped at the entrance. Looked at the doorbell. Took a deep breath. And knocked. The wait lasted only seconds, but it felt like forever. Then the door opened. Ryan Walker. He hadn't changed much. He still had that confident air, that straight posture, like he was ready to confront anyone. His eyes locked on Ethan's, and for a moment, time froze. They didn't need words. Ryan knew exactly why Ethan was there. His expression changed slightly. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, but it quickly vanished, replaced by something Ethan couldn't identify. Ethan. He said his name like an old acquaintance. Like there weren't years of distance between them. Like he wasn't potentially stealing Ethan's wife. "Can we talk?" Ethan asked, his voice steady. Ryan hesitated for a moment but then opened the door and stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. Ethan went inside. The place was spotless, meticulously organized, almost cold. Nothing about it hinted Ryan might live a messy or chaotic life. On the contrary, he came across as a man who had it all figured out, someone who knew exactly who he was and what he wanted. That fact bothered Ethan. Ryan led him to the living room and offered him a drink, but Ethan turned it down. He wasn't there for small talk. He was there for the truth. He sat in an armchair and stared at Ryan. "I'll get straight to the point," Ethan said, clasping his hands over his knees. "What's Olivia doing here?" Ryan didn't look surprised. He didn't try to make excuses or laugh nervously. He just looked at Ethan for a moment and let out a heavy sigh. "I don't know what she told you," Ryan began, leaning forward, "but I'm not the bad guy in this story, Ethan." Anger flared in Ethan's chest. "Then tell me what the story is. Because from where I'm standing, you're seeing my wife behind my back. Ryan didn't look away. I didn't go after her, Ethan. She came looking for me. The words hit Ethan like a punch. He blinked, trying to process it. What? Ryan leaned back on the couch, crossing his arms. I moved into this house about a year ago. I had no idea your daughter lived on this street. When Olivia showed up, I was just as surprised. But I swear, man, it wasn't my idea. She came to me. Ethan felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. Why? Ryan paused. You're gonna have to ask her that. The words tasted like poison. Because Ethan knew Ryan wasn't lying. Which meant Olivia was. Ryan's words echoed in Ethan's mind as he drove back home. Over and over, one question burned inside him, why? That was what gnawed at him. Why would Olivia seek out Ryan? What was she after in him that Ethan couldn't give her? The answer was waiting at home. When he pulled into the garage and turned off the engine, he stayed there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. The clock on the dashboard read almost midnight. Would Olivia be asleep? Or would she be awake, waiting for him? He got out of the car and went inside the house. Everything was silent. Silence had always been comfortable for Ethan, but now it felt oppressive. He climbed the stairs slowly. The bedroom door was ajar. He pushed it open and found Olivia sleeping. Sleeping like nothing was wrong. Like nothing had been destroyed. Ethan felt his chest burn. He sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at her. It was hard to hate her. In fact, it was impossible. Even now, knowing she'd been lying, emotionally cheating, hiding the truth, he still loved her. And that was the worst kind of pain. He stayed there a long time, just watching. When Olivia moved and opened her eyes, she found him looking at her. What's wrong? She asked, her voice groggy with sleep. Ethan stayed quiet for a moment before finally asking, why did you go looking for him? It was like her sleep disappeared instantly. Her body went rigid. She knew exactly what he meant. Then everything changed. Her eyes filled with something Ethan couldn't identify. Fear? Guilt? Relief? She sat up slowly, pulling the sheets around her, looking away for a moment. The hesitation hurt more than any confession could. Did you talk to him? She whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. She already knew. A long silence filled the room before Olivia finally took a deep breath and said, I never wanted it to happen like this. Ethan let out a harsh, bitter laugh. How did you want it to happen, Olivia? Did you want me to never find out? To keep your little game of secrets forever? She shut her eyes for a second, like she was gathering her courage. Then she said words Ethan never imagined he'd hear. Lauren isn't your daughter. The world stopped. Ethan blinked, feeling his whole body freeze. He heard the words. Heard every syllable. But his mind refused to process them. He leaned forward like he hadn't understood. What? Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I found out shortly after we got married. But I already loved you. I knew you'd be a great father. And I thought, if I never said anything, it wouldn't matter. Ethan felt a bitter taste rising in his throat. He stood up, almost stumbling, like his body wasn't working right. You're lying. She had to be lying. But Olivia just kept crying, covering her face with her hands. That was when Ethan realized this was the truth he never wanted to see. All those distant looks, those silent moments, the shadow that had always been there. Ryan. Does he know? Ethan asked, his voice on the verge of breaking. Olivia shook her head, wiping her tears with the back of her hands. No. I never told him. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. So you destroyed 2 lives. Mine and his. Olivia sobbed. But Ethan felt no pity. Not anymore. He grabbed his keys, not even looking at her. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan stopped in the doorway. He took a deep breath. Then he said the only thing he could say. "To figure out who I am, now that I realize I've never been who I thought I was." And he left. Without looking back. Without another word. The days that followed were a blur to Ethan. Time seemed to drag on and fly by at the same time. He couldn't have said exactly how many weeks had gone by since that night. All he knew was that there was no turning back. The divorce went through quickly. There were no big fights, no endless arguments or legal battles. Ethan didn't want her money or revenge, he just wanted distance. Olivia didn't try to fight it. Maybe because she knew there was nothing to save. Or maybe because she knew she'd already chosen a different path. But before signing the papers, Ethan asked for just one thing. "Don't tell Lauren." His voice was firm, but there was a weight to it, a fragility he didn't want to show. Olivia, sitting on the other side of the table, looked away. Her eyes were red, and the dark circles under them betrayed that she hadn't slept in weeks. But Ethan didn't care. None of it mattered anymore. "Ethan," he leaned forward, looking straight into her eyes. "You owe me that." She bit her lip, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. "I'll never tell her." He held her gaze for a moment. "Not Lauren. Not Ryan. No one can ever know." Olivia nodded, her trembling hands holding the pen. "I promise." And Ethan believed that promise. It was all he had left. After that, the last formalities were taken care of, and then she was gone. Ethan didn't ask where she was going to live. He didn't want to know. But the truth found him anyway. Lauren, clueless about everything, casually mentioned during a lunch that Olivia had moved out. Into Ryan's house. Ethan just gave a small smile and kept on eating. He didn't feel anything anymore. No surprise. No outrage. Just confirmation of what he already knew. Still, even though his marriage had been a lie, he'd never lied about being a father. He kept visiting Lauren and his grandson just like always. He was there for all the important dates, helped with the heavy lifting, made a point of spending time with the baby. Because as far as he was concerned, Lauren was his daughter. He raised her. He taught her how to ride a bike, held her hand on her first day of school, was the first to dance with her at her wedding. And no biological fact could take that away. Months went by. He watched Lauren live her life as usual, watched his grandson grow, watched the world keep turning as if everything was fine. But then, he found out. It was a normal afternoon when Lauren called him. "Mom is living with me now." Her words hit him hard. "What?" He frowned. "What about Ryan?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Lauren let out a short, humorless laugh. He did to her the same thing he did in the past. Ethan closed his eyes, shaking his head slowly. It was so obvious. But Olivia never wanted to see it. "She's devastated, Dad." The word "dad" pierced him in a strange way, a mix of pain and relief. "She'll be okay," he said in a calm voice. Lauren sighed. "Do you think she deserves to be?" Ethan looked out the window, watching the sun set on the horizon. He thought for a moment and then answered without hesitation, "Life already gave her exactly what she deserves." Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.